Good evening or good afternoon. It just feels like evening because of the time of year, doesn't it? I'm back with another live. Look at me, I've got the bug now. I did three Facebook lives on Monday to launch the new book, Just Ask, reading you the prologue and then interviewing a couple of the contributors to the book, Billy Schwer and Donna St. Louis. If you want to catch up with those, they're on my Facebook profile now and they're also on YouTube. But there was someone else I wanted to bring on and introduce to you. When I read the prologue to you on Monday, it would have become clear to those of you who didn't know before that a book that started out being about the challenges of not asking for help and not communicating the support that we need became something bigger when a good friend of mine passed away because he took his own life. And in the many conversations that I had about the book and the interviews that I conducted about the book, the topic of suicide came up on several occasions. The issues of mental health came up on several occasions as well. Now, I'm no mental health expert, and I would never profess to be, never claim to be. That's not my area, but it was clearly an area where the book had to go into. And I did two things as a result. One of them was that I interviewed two clinical psychologists, one Dr. Linda Shaw in the UK, and the other Joanna Jameson, who's a counsellor in Chicago. And so I wanted to get their perspective, so I made sure that I had that right approach for the book and the right clinical, professional answers to that. The other thing I wanted to do was give people a place to go, because I'm not equipped to answer people's questions that might be raised by what comes up in the book. So I looked for the right fit, and I found a small charity in the UK called My Black Dog. I say small, but growing because of the just how topical this is becoming, and how many people, particularly with the pandemic, are becoming much more aware of the challenges they're facing with depression and with other issues. So I approached My Black Dog, and I offered to contribute a percentage of our royalties from the book to the charity. And also do two other things that were really important to me. Number one, at the back of the book, we have an advert for My Black Dog that just gives people a place to go. That was the most important thing to me, I think. And the other was to help raise their profile, to let people know that they're out there. So I have the founder of My Black Dog, Niki Clark, with me now. Nikki, thanks for joining
Hello.
me. And thanks
Oh,
for
well,
your support so far.
well, it's a wonderful book, and we're so very honoured that you have thought of us to be a part of this, to raise awareness and to raise a little bit of money, hopefully, as well. But the awareness part, especially.
It's my pleasure, and I think, as I said to you in our original call, there's a lot of charities in this space now doing great things. It means a lot to be able to work with one where you don't get lost in the mass, and you know that the impact you have is going to be direct. And I think My Black Dog really fits that bill. And you've got some fantastic ambassadors as well that are out there saying some great things about the work that you're doing. Perhaps you can share a little bit about My Black Dog, and why did it, where did it sort of stem from, and a little bit about the birth of the charity and the growth of the charity so far.
Yeah, of course, delighted. Well, I started My Black Dog. I'm the founder. I started it a few years back. 3 years ago, I think it is now. Gosh, coming to the end of 2020 as we are, and we became a charity in March 2019 officially. But what had happened is I've suffered from depression my whole life. It's been something that I've dealt with, gone through many years, and I had a traumatic event a few years ago, and I suffered from PTSD, from anxiety, and the depression just came flooding back. And I knew from my previous experiences that I needed help. But I knew as well that I didn't want to share what had happened with my friends and my family, because I very much wanted to shield them from it. And I was very much aware of, how bad things were. And I just wanted to get help. But I got put on this NHS waiting list for a long time. I think it was 9 weeks. And I was very unwell. And I had medication, but it took a while to kick in. And during that time, sort of in the interim, I was just desperate. I wanted to talk to someone, but I didn't know who to talk to. And I remember just being around friends and not knowing how to express myself, and when do I bring it up, and do I bring it up at someone's birthday, or do I bring it up at my, a friend's baby shower? Like, when's a good time? When am I supposed to talk about this? And it was never a good time.
Yeah.
And I thought, I just wish I could talk to someone who gets this. And that's where it came from, because I think that it's so hard to talk about these things, and I think we put it off for a very long time. We'll say things like, no, I'm fine, I'm all right, I'll have another drink, I don't want to talk to my friends about it, no, I'm all right, I'll just deal with it. And then you do that for so long and fob yourself off, and then you have this huge crash, and it is so much harder to recover from. But if you'd just spoken to someone at the beginning, and someone who understood you, it wouldn't be as scary as trying to talk to someone who, maybe is very close to you, or maybe trying to talk to a work colleague, because we don't know how people are going to react to these sort of stories. And it was very important for me to set up something where it was a very empathetic service from people who really do understand what you've gone through, because the difference with My Black Dog is that all of the volunteers have been through their own experiences. So they really do get how you feel. And so there's no judgment.
I think that's one of the things that really stood out for me. One of the stories I share in Just Ask is Andy Barrow, and Andy was a very keen teenage rugby player who suffered a very bad spinal cord injury and has been wheelchair bound ever since. And he said that when he left hospital in a wheelchair, he found himself in a wheelchair rugby crowd. I think it was called Murder Ball at the time. And it was at that point when he found himself surrounded by similar sports enthusiasts who were wheelchair bound that he found his tribe. And one of the quotes in the book that we've used in the promotion is from Andy, that says it's so important to have people who get you. And another interview with Luke Ambler. Luke quit professional rugby league after his brother committed suicide. And founded Andy's Man Club, which is named after his brother, not me. But he brings together groups of men under 40 to talk about their challenges. And he said, I asked him about gender differences, and he said, in terms of sharing and vulnerability, and he said, whether you're male or female, people find it easier to share with others who have been through the same thing as them. And I think that's very much your USP, isn't it, My Black Dog?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that with mental health conditions, when it's so very hard to talk to someone about it, because you don't know the reaction. And as much as we're breaking down the stigma and we're trying to get on board with this mental health crisis that's going on, and this epidemic that's going on in the UK, and there's loads of chat about it, and people are on social media, and it's in schools, and it's at universities, it's everywhere, but there still is a lot of stigma. And for me, I couldn't have done My Black Dog 5 years ago. I couldn't have done it 10 years ago. When I was suffering in my 20s, I didn't talk about it at all because it wasn't talked about. And so we're not going to fix that in, a few short years, which it has been, just very short amount of time that people have started to talk about this. So it's still for the people who it resonates with, they're still holding on and going, I don't quite trust it. I don't feel like I can, because we don't know how people are going to react, because the stigma is very much there. And if you open up to someone and you trust them and they reject you, or they leave you, or they judge you for it, then you're just going to shut down and not talk to someone again. And I think we run a very real risk in that we keep telling people to talk. I think do talk, but if you talk to someone who gets it, who's been through it before, then it's a softer landing than having to take a huge risk and open up to the people that maybe you really love the most.
So one of the things that's come up a lot over the last few days when I've been talking about this topic is people are saying, yes, it's really important that we open up. It's important that we're vulnerable, but it's also important that we are there for other people, which is something I address in the book. And I think people find that difficult, knowing how to open the conversation, how to encourage people to speak. So it's great that there are charities like yours around where those who don't have someone to talk to do have someone to talk to. Yeah. But for people who are watching this, who actually are inspired to be a better friend, it's probably an awful way of putting it, but be there more for their friends. What's the advice you can give them in terms of encouraging people to open up in a way that's comfortable for them?
So to encourage people to talk to you if you're not suffering, do you mean?
If you feel that they, if they're not opening up to people, to let them know that you're there for them if they want to.
And that's so important. I talk to the volunteers a lot about this because, for them, they've had good experiences and bad experiences, and it's very much dependent on how much they talk to someone or share with someone
Mm.
about things, depending on how that reaction has been. I think probably just letting that person know that you're there to listen and not peppering them with a bunch of suggestions, because that's your go-to as a friend, isn't it? You go, oh, have you tried this, or have you tried that, or what about this? And it's not necessarily helpful to suggest those things to someone who might be in a very dark place, because suggesting yoga to someone who can't get out of bed is not a great idea. It'll add to guilt of not being able to get out of bed. So those sorts of suggestions, maybe hold them for a minute until you find out more. And just the listening or just the being their part. You don't have to fix someone. They're not broken. They just need company, they need companionship, and they need for someone to say it's going to be all right. Because as my friend Eddie often says, suicide is a temporary solution, a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And we hear this all the time. And the darkness, you can get through it, and it's knowing you can get through it. That's the important part. But when you're in it, it's so hard because you think it'll feel this way forever. I'll never get out of it. So by understanding that as a friend and knowing that that's how they feel, the sort of tomorrow's a new day is a very damaging thing to say to someone. So I would avoid all those platitudes that you throw at people, chin up or whatever. And just to say, I'm here whenever you're ready.
And that, I think, over the course of my journey with this book and this conversation, it's one of my biggest learning points. Is I'm that person. I'm a fixer. I'm always trying to find the solution. And actually, what people often want is just someone to listen. They're not looking for words of magic from you.
Yeah.
They're not looking for the magic solution because they don't necessarily believe it's there, but they want to know they're not alone. And
Yeah.
someone's there for them. And yeah, it's something I'm still working on, but it's definitely something that I think is really important to pick up. Nikki, thank you so much for joining me on this and for talking about this. If people want, sorry.
I said it's a wonderful book, and
Thank
it
you.
really does give you a true insight to how it is to live with these things. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Nikki. If people want to find out more about My Black Dog, other than turn to the back of Just Ask, where I hope they've already got their copy, if they're still waiting for Amazon or others to deliver, how do they reach out to you?
You can visit myblackdog.co. We're also on Instagram, and we are also on Facebook. So that's myblackdog_co for Instagram and myblackdog7 on Facebook.
Great. And I'll tag you in this post on the various platforms, and you can come in with links and so forth for people there as well. Great.
Lovely.
Thank you very much, Nikki. So thanks to Nikki for that and for joining me. It is an important message, and I wanted to share with you what we're doing with the book in that space. This was going to be a one-off thing on Monday to celebrate the launch, but the response I've got to the interview so far has been really positive. And so I've got a couple of other people lined up for you. And as long as there's interest, I'll see if I can drag people onto Facebook Lives every now and then and just share some interesting insights. So if you've got anyone in mind as you read the book you want to hear from, just ask.